talking about developing system leaders, we're talking about developing the capacity in all of you to bring forth collective leadership. This collective leadership is the kind of leadership needed to address complex problems that no person, organisation, programme or project can solve in isolation. Creating systemic change, the kind of change that gets to the root causes of problems, is very much a team sport. It takes different behaviours from those of you who would seek to exercise leadership, and we'll come to those. But before that, it starts with having a different mindset. What do I mean by mindset? Because it can be a word that confuses some people. I'm talking about our attitudes, beliefs, inclinations, or what you might call mental models. The glasses that you're wearing when you look out on the world. This idea is nicely captured by Shana and Karfa, who identify 3 ways in which the mindset of system leadership needs to be open and flexible, as opposed to rigid and closed. Why? Because complex systemic adaptive challenges, like addressing rising violence or making Essex a leader in the green economy, which are 2 of the system challenges on your list, are by their very nature not easy to solve. It reminds me of something that one of the System Challenge sponsors, Adrian Coggins, said at the sponsors meeting. Adrian's the head of wellbeing and public health at Essex County Council, and the challenge he's sponsoring is about reducing childhood and family obesity. And he said, don't come back to me and say the answer is about eating less and exercising more. He said, whatever it is, it's not that. And he said he would stop listening to you if you did. And that's why we need to dig deeper, opening our minds to challenge our assumptions, opening our hearts to be vulnerable and to truly hear from one another, opening our wills to let go of preset goals and agendas and see what is really needed and possible. Hearts, minds, wills, it all sounds a bit fluffy. So what do we actually mean by this? What does it mean to open your mind to challenge assumptions? For system leadership, it means be curious. A question could be, why do I frame the problem as I do? It's like the phrase, if you have a hammer, suddenly everything looks like a nail. So why do you think the way that you do? What is it, perhaps in your professional training or experience of the world, that makes you frame issues the way you do? What models or modes of thinking do you instinctively reach for, or perhaps default to? What might it mean to open your heart? System leadership is about understanding a problem in all its complexity and engaging with it on those terms. And you can't understand a complex problem unless you're seeing it from multiple perspectives. That's why you need to listen deeply, or as Atticus Finch might put it, walk a mile in another person's shoes. How does the world look differently from a different perspective? And what does that new perspective challenge about your values or identity? What power or privilege might you lose if you started to see things from that point of view? You can't understand a complex problem unless you're seeing it from multiple perspectives, but it can be challenging to do so, pulling on the threads that might not have tidy ends. And finally, opening our wills. This might be the hardest of all. One reason you are probably successful in your roles and sent on this course is because you're good at coming up with plans and executing them. Thinking about what success would look like if it wasn't defined in the way you first thought it would be can be challenging. The truth is that it takes more courage to let go than to hold on, to be willing to take the first step on a journey when you aren't quite sure where it's going to lead. But it is that courage that system leadership requires. To give up on the idea that we can know and accept the idea that we need to explore, to hold the space so that that exploration can take place. But how do we do this? Now we're talking about behaviours. When we think about behaviours, we often equate these with actions, but we need to start more broadly than that. And one key to systems leadership is this cycle here of seeing, thinking and acting. As you know from what we have already learned on the course, when we're talking about contexts of complexity, there's unlikely to be a linear relationship between cause and effect. We are in a world of unintended consequences from actions, of disruption, experimentation, and learning as a mode of action. This means we need to pay close attention to what is going on and what is required to bring about the change that's needed. So first, we need to observe the events and patterns that are going on around you. Who's talking to who? What are they talking about? When are they talking? Who's listening to who? What's not being said? Where do you see alliances forming and strong relationships? What's the history of the problem? And here you might want to use the magnifying glass as well as the map. Then interpret what you're observing. What is really going on here? Here you are unlikely to land on the truth, and that may not be a relevant concept anyway. Try to develop multiple hypotheses. Make a guess, then make another guess. Challenge yourself to see multiple possibilities. Then design interventions to address the challenges you observe. Consider the context, what resources you have available, your role and capabilities, and make sure it's an experiment to test your hypothesis rather than a solution to the hypothesis you prefer. Then observe what happens after your intervention. What's different? What have you learned? And then you can go again. As you go through the cycle, what behaviours or approaches will help you to bring forth the collective leadership we talked about at the start? Here I'll focus on 5 behaviours for system leadership. The first is about seeing the larger system. We talked about moving between the magnifying glass and the map. Too often we get stuck with the magnifying glass, you in your small corner and I in mine. So as a deliberate behaviour, we need to engage with the perspectives of others and see the world through the lens of their priorities. Understand that you yourself are part of the system you want to change, and try to understand the role you are playing with others within that system. To see the larger system, it can really help to bring partners together to share parts of the puzzle. This helps to map the problem from many perspectives, but also to understand where the blockages are. This is why this is a problem and why it has not yet been solved. The second one is about building trust. Trust is the currency of system leadership and built when others feel heard. And they feel heard when they know that you're prepared to change how you think, when your mind, heart and will is open. And this is not just about you, it's about building the collective capacity for action. So where you can, hold the space and be deliberate in trying to create spaces for others to share and build bonds of trust. The third we've identified is identify the challenge. What is the problem that you need to attend to? What kind of problem is it? Is it a technical problem that can be solved by applying existing expertise? Or is it an adaptive challenge where learning is required and the change might require challenging the values that people hold dear? If you get your diagnosis wrong, then your interventions are unlikely to work. And of course, not everyone is likely to agree on what the problem is. That's okay. Hold the tension between common purpose on the one hand and the value of different perspectives on the other. Fourth, direct attention to the work. You do not define the task of system leadership. It is defined by the nature of the work. This should be the focus of the collective efforts you are trying to mobilise, and part of your job is to keep it there. Call out work avoidance and shift the focus back to the hard work of wrestling with the task at hand. Encourage experimentation as a mode of action and use it to generate learning. And try to pace the work so that people can handle the rate of change. Here you need to sense when you need to push and when you might need to pause. And finally, number 5 here is co-creating the future. Sometimes the present subsumes us, overwhelms us, drains us, and that's especially true in the time of a pandemic. But beyond the barricades, is there a world you want to see? A key behaviour of system leadership is to unleash the power of collective imagination about what a different future might look like. Done collectively, this can be a real galvanising force. And then begin the hard yards of working together to bridge the gap between the present and the future, working with partners from across the system. Here, a key task of system leadership is to protect marginal voices and perspectives that get pushed out. Everyone is bringing a piece of reality that must be attended to create enduring change.